Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I'm your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version on YouTube on Wednesdays as well, so make sure you are subscribed. And if you're looking for more exclusive Killer Instinct content, you can always find that over on our Patreon. That link is always in the description box below, and if you're listening on Spotify, you can find those episodes weaved in to the feed as well as on the top of the page. So make sure you check that out if you have not already. But with that being said, you guys, let's talk about the real reason we are here today, which is to talk about the case of Jodi Sanderholm. Jodi's case is a solved case. It is one that is absolutely horrifying. It involves stalking, it involves torture, and it involves murder. And I'm very curious to hear what you have to say once we get to the end of it. So with that being said, let's jump right on into it today. Jodi Sanderholm was born on March 9th, 1988 in Arkansas City, Kansas, to her parents, Brian and Cindy Sanderholm. Arkansas City is a small town in south central Kansas. The population today sits a little under 12,000 people. The police of Arkansas City say that this is the type of town where you know a lot of people, but it's still big enough to where you don't know everyone. Jodi grew up in a tight-knit family with her parents and her siblings. She was known as driven, kind, loyal. She was very soft-spoken and very sweet. She was said to be the type of girl that brought a sense of peace and warmth and calmness into every room that she walked into. She was known as outgoing. She was incredibly smart. She graduated valedictorian of her high school class, and she also had a very big passion for dance. Jodi had been dancing ever since she was 3 years old. She danced on the dance team in high school at Ark City High School, where she graduated from, and then continued on her journey with dance while dancing for Cowley College, which is where she attended after graduating high school. Now, Jodi lived at home while attending Cowley College, and she was studying pre-pharmacy with hopes of one day becoming a pharmacist. On her journey to get there, Jodi loved spending time with her family. She loved seeing her friends. She also had a boyfriend. She wasn't a huge partier, and she was someone who wouldn't go out that often. She would rather be at home with her family and her loved ones rather than going out on a crazy Friday night. Jodi was someone who was definitely a creature of habit and a creature of routine. She had her routines and she liked sticking to them. She liked a schedule. Her routine typically consisted on the weekdays of going to class, going to dance practice, coming home. She would always pick up the mail on her way inside of the house. She would drop the mail on the kitchen island. She would make herself something to eat because typically this would be around lunchtime. And her mom, Cindy, would always give Jodi a phone call around this time just to check in with her daughter while Cindy was at work. Now, based off of that, you can probably tell, like I said, there was a very regimented routine in Jodi's life. She had a very structured way of doing things, and she didn't waver from that typically. So as you can imagine, on January 5th, 2007, when Jodi's mom, Cindy, called her daughter, as she always did, and didn't get an answer, she knew that something was very wrong. On January 5th, Cindy called Jodi just like she always would, however, didn't receive an answer. Cindy initially figured that this was no big deal. Jodi must have been in the shower, so she figured that she would just call her back a few minutes later and her daughter would answer. However, when that happened, Jodi still did not pick up the phone. Now, Jodi's sister Jennifer also gave Jodi a phone call around this time as well, and it was expected that Jodi would always answer Jennifer's calls, especially around this specific time, January 5th, 2007, because at this time, Jennifer was pregnant and she was going to have her baby any day at that point. And so Jodi would always answer Jennifer's calls out of the thought that it could be her sister calling her, telling her that she was about to have her baby. However, when Jennifer called Jodi and did not get an answer again, this is when the concern really started to rise. Now, Brian, Jodi's father, tried to reassure Cindy over the phone that Jodi was surely fine, not to worry. She was probably busy trying to get her afternoon ready and set to go. However, Cindy had an instinct that something was wrong. So much much so that she decided to leave work early and go home and check on her daughter. Cindy said that when she arrived to the house, Jodi's car was not in the driveway as it usually would be, and there was also no mail on the kitchen island counter. And like I said, that was something that happened every single day. Now, Cindy did reach out to some of Jodi's dance teammates who said that Jodi was at dance practice that day. However, no one had seen nor heard from Jodi since practice was over at 11:45 a.m. that same day. And even further than that, they also told Cindy that Jodi never showed up for their afternoon meeting that day. So they had their practice in the morning, and then the dance team had a meeting that afternoon, and Jodi was not present for that meeting. And at this point, Cindy knew that something was very wrong with her daughter. So Brian also came home from work, and the two of them called 911. Now, the chief of police at the Arkansas City Police Department at this point was Chief Wallace. Chief Wallace had been in the police force for 17 years, however, had only been chief for just a few weeks at this time, but he did have somewhat of a connection to this case because one of his own sons was in the same graduating class as Jodi Sanderholm, so he was familiar with the Sanderholm family. Now, upon hearing that Jodi was missing, Chief Wallace sent over a police officer to the Sanderholm residence to speak with Cindy and Brian and get some more information about Jodi. Now, when asked about her life, Jodi's parents explained that Jodi did have a boyfriend. That boyfriend's name was David Maringer. Now, police would later discover that David was out of town at the time that Jodi went missing. He was visiting his brother in Dallas, Texas, and when contacted by authorities, David told police that he had not spoken to Jodi since the day prior on January 4th, but he agreed to fly back to Arkansas City to help aid in any questions that they had for him. Police also spoke to other dance team members from Cowley College that were on the same dance team as Jodi. Police asked these other dance team members if there was anything that stood out to them as unusual or suspicious leading up to Jodi's disappearance, if there was anyone that just seemed a little bit out of place, a little bit out of the ordinary, and if anything just struck them as odd. And to their surprise, these dance team members did tell police that there actually was someone who rubbed the entire dance team the wrong way, and that was a man named Justin Thurber. Now, Justin Thurber was a 23-year-old man at the time, and he worked at the local Subway. He was known by the other dance team members to lurk around the dance team. He was always there. He was just always on the sidelines. He was always in the background. They explained to police, the dance team members explained, that he would always just hang around the campus. He was always lurking around the dance team, and he had no reason to be there. Justin was not a student of Cowley College. He was just someone who was always there. Dance team members mentioned how Justin would follow the dance team to the parking lot. He would also watch through the windows as the dance team would do their practice. And this was not the first time that police had ever heard of the name Justin Thurber. They were actually pretty familiar with him. Justin had a history of petty crime. It was nothing serious or violent. However, he was more of an annoyance than anything else. And at the time that Jodi went missing, Justin was actually out on bond for a theft charge that he had. So at this point, police went to go and speak with Justin. And similarly to Jodi, Justin also lived at home with his parents. Now, upon speaking to authorities, Justin was pretty surprised that he was brought up in this conversation at all, because according to him, he had a rock solid alibi. Justin told authorities that on January 5th, he drove over to a friend's house of his, and once he got there, it was his friend and his friend's two other friends. So it was Justin and 3 other men in total. Justin said at this point, the 4 of them collectively got into the friend's car and drove around some of the rural areas of Arkansas City together, listening to music and just enjoying the drive up until they got their car stuck in a dirt road in the Kaw Wildlife area. And I will get to the Kaw Wildlife area in a moment and explain it further. But Justin Justin said that when the car got stuck in the mud, he got out of the car and began walking alone towards Arkansas City because the Kaw Wildlife Area, which was this nature reserve park, was about a 40-minute drive from his house. Justin said he eventually grabbed his phone and called his dad after he had walked a certain amount away from the car and asked his dad to come pick him up, which his dad ended up doing. Justin also told authorities that the friend who he initially had driven over to see, that friend that Justin drove his own car over to see earlier that day, ended up driving Justin's car back to him. And after Justin retrieved his car, he then went to Subway to pick up his check from work, and then he went back home. So that was Justin's rock-solid alibi, and in order to confirm this, police obviously wanted to speak to Justin's 3 other friends that he claimed that he was with that day, and they were able to identify these 3 men, and these 3 men were Jason Carr, Paul Dennison, and Stuart Engel. Now, all 3 of these men were similarly no stranger to authorities. They all had petty crime on their records. Now, when police sat down individually with each of these 3 men, to their surprise, all 3 of these men had no idea what Justin was talking about. They all adamantly denied being with him all day on January 5th. They had no idea where Justin was that day, but they knew that they were not with Justin. Each one of them individually denied being with Justin. In fact, the 3 men were actually pretty agitated that Justin would drag their names into this to begin with, but police obviously had to fact check these 3 men as well. So they tried to see if these 3 men had alibis, and Jason, he was pretty much immediately eliminated from this potential list of names because he had an alibi. He was at a physical therapy appointment in which his physical therapist did confirm. So because of that, police knew that Jason was obviously not with Justin that day, but that still left room for question for the other 2 men. Now, at this point, police's job was to figure out who was lying here. Were Justin's friends lying and they were actually just trying to throw Justin under the bus and save themselves? Or was it Justin who was lying? Now, at this point, David, Jodi's boyfriend, he had returned from Texas and he sat down with authorities and he once again told them that he was not in town when Jodi went missing, and cell phone records and credit card statements were able to confirm this. So because of these findings, David was ruled out of having any potential involvement in Jodi's case. David and Jodi were in a very happy relationship at the time of Jodi's disappearance. There was never any evidence of any sort of abuse or violence in the relationship. So because of that, police were confident when crossing David's name off of this list. So this now brings us back to Justin Thurber and Justin's friends. At this point, police spoke to an ex-girlfriend of Justin's who made a very unsettling remark regarding something that Justin had once told her. Now, this ex-girlfriend said that Justin loved driving around the Kaw Wildlife Area, which again is the same area where Justin said that his friend's car got stuck in the mud. Now, according to this ex-girlfriend, she stated that her and Justin, when they were together, would often drive through this Kaw Wildlife Area, and on one occasion, when she was driving with Justin, Justin told her that he would be able to dispose a body in the Kaw Wildlife Area and no one would ever find it. So he basically said that if he were to dispose of a body, it would be in this specific area. Now, to give you an understanding of the Kaw Wildlife Area, this is a very large reserve, a nature reserve area. It covers approximately 4,300 acres, over that at this point, and it is managed by the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, and throughout the entirety of it, it is covered with trees, tall grass, and the Arkansas River also runs through this Kaw Wildlife Area. There's also different bodies of water, lakes are in the area. There are also many wetlands throughout the area, boat docks, different things of that nature in this area, and it's very large, like I said. Now, hearing the comments that Justin had made to his ex-girlfriend and also hearing how much Justin really liked the Kaw Wildlife Area, this definitely stopped police in their tracks. Police at this point decided to go back to Justin's other 2 friends, Paul Dennison and Stuart Engel, both in which at this point had provided police with their alibis. One was out of town and the other was at a courthouse actually getting his marriage license, and these were both confirmed. And with confirming those those two alibis, Paul and Stuart's names were also crossed off the potential suspect list, really only leaving one other person left, and that was Justin Thurber. So now police were going back to the drawing board and they were trying to figure out what they knew for fact in this case. And what that was that they knew that the last time that Jodi was seen by anyone that they knew of was getting into her parked car that was in front of the Cowley College auditorium after her dance practice. That is where Jodi parked her car as usual, and on the morning of January 5th, it was no different. Now, luckily, police were able to obtain security camera footage from Cowley College, and in doing so, they were able to spot Jodi driving into school that morning as expected. But they also saw Justin's car driving directly behind her and following her. Not only that, they also saw that in the days leading up to Jodi's disappearance, Justin's car was seen again in the parking lot of Cowley College, just circling the area. Now, like I previously mentioned, Justin had no reason to be at Cowley College whatsoever, so it struck police as suspicious that he would be seen in the parking lot leading up to the days of Jodi going missing. Now, at this point, police were feeling more confident that Justin was their possible suspect, but they did not have enough evidence to arrest him at this point. So what they did instead was they actually got in contact with his bail bondsman at the time. As I previously mentioned, Justin was out on bond for theft, and they actually had his bond revoked, which allowed police to arrest Justin and bring him into custody in order to speak with him again. And not only that, when they arrested Justin, they were able to obtain his DNA, which was very, very important. They got his fingerprints and they got his DNA. And they also got a search warrant to search Justin's family home to see if there was anything inside of the home that pointed to Jodi's disappearance. Now, Justin's father was at the home at the time that the warrant was issued, and he confirmed Justin's story. He said that he did in fact pick Justin up right outside the Call Wildlife area on January 5th after Justin had said that he had been stuck out there with his friends. Now, his dad said that he did not see Justin with his friends, but he took Justin's word for the fact that Justin claimed that he was with his friends prior to his dad picking him up. Justin's dad also said that when he picked Justin up, he noticed that Justin was covered in mud and his clothes were very wet. But considering the fact that Justin told his dad that the car had gotten stuck in the mud, he really didn't think too much of it. He just figured that Justin's condition was because he had tried to help the car get out from the mud. And Justin's dad said that right when he brought Justin home, Justin immediately took a shower and put his clothes in the laundry. He also helped Justin wash his shoes that were covered in mud. And when police heard this, it was very discouraging for them because they were worried that any potential evidence that was on Justin's clothes or Justin's shoes had been immediately washed away because right when Justin got home, he threw them in the washing machine. Now, it didn't seem from police's perspective that Justin's father was a knowing accomplice in washing off his son's shoes and driving him away from the potential crime scene. It seemed as if Justin was just dishonest with his father as well, and whether his dad was turning a blind eye or just genuinely naive, that was up for debate. Now, police did take several items from Justin's family home, including his sneakers that he was wearing on January 5th that his dad washed. They took his cell phone, they took some of his articles of clothing, and they also took his blue Cadillac car because they wanted to search his vehicle. Now, the biggest piece of evidence from this case came from Justin's shoes. Now, the reason being is that when police went to go search the Call Wildlife area, they found multiple shoe prints leading down a dirt trail. This stood out to them because alongside these sneaker shoe prints also appeared to be flip-flop shoe prints. So you had two different sets of shoe prints going down this dirt trail. Now, this was important because it was believed that Jodi was wearing flip-flops at the time of her disappearance. Now, what police noticed about these sets of prints were that at a certain point down this dirt trail, the flip-flops stop moving. So the sneakers keep going, the sneaker prints continue, but the flip-flop prints stop. And police wondered and theorized that if these prints were from Justin and Jodi, did this mean that Justin was trying to drag Jodi down this dirt trail, have her keep walking, and at a certain point, Jodi refused, and did Justin pick her up and continue walking with her the rest of the way? And in order to get the answers that they needed, police brought in a forensic footwear analyst, and they wanted this analyst to compare the outsole and size of Justin's shoes, those sneakers that they obtained in the search of the home, and compare them to the shoe prints that were found at the Kaw Wildlife area. And the way that they were going to be able to do this was that the footwear analyst was going to make a cast of the shoe prints that were found on that dirt trail and send those off to the forensics lab for comparison testing. But that was not the only print that police wanted the footwear analyst to obtain, because detectives also discovered a shoe print that seemed very similar to the prints found on that trail at the Kaw Wildlife area. But this time, this print was right in front of the Sanderholm house. So police had that forensic footwear analyst go take a cast of that shoe print as well and compare all of them together. And after the prints were examined, it was confirmed that the shoe prints found at the Kaw Wildlife area and outside of the Sanderholm house were confirmed to be a match to Justin Thurber's sneakers. And with this confirmation, police were confident that whatever happened to Jodi had to have happened at the Kaw Wildlife area. So that is where they really focused their search for Jodi, and they were confident that they were getting closer to finding her. Police continued searching the area. They followed the shoe prints. However, it led them to nothing. Now, after the results of the shoe prints came back, police were confident that they needed to narrow down their search to the Kaw Wildlife area. They believed that whatever happened to Jodi happened at the Kaw Wildlife area, and they were confident that if they did this, they would be closer to finding her. They continued to search the area following the shoe prints. However, it led them to nothing. And after about 3 days of searching, police decided that they were going to call their search a day. It was getting later in the evening. The sun was setting. It was getting dark out, and they decided that they were going to come back the following day and continue their search. Now, as police got into their car and began driving out of the Kaw Wildlife area, this included a search and rescue tracker named Ron Cannon. On Ron's way out of the Kaw Wildlife area, it led him past the Cowley County State Fishing Lake. Now, this was still located in the Kaw Wildlife area. And this was actually the specific spot where Justin told detectives that his dad had picked him up from. And based off of a hunch that Ron Cannon had, he decided to pull over at this point. And in that parameter of the area, there were public restrooms in the park. And Ron decided to walk towards those public restrooms. Now, we have to remember this is not your typical restroom. These are outdoor public park restrooms. If you've been to one, you know what I'm talking about. So these are not just your typical normal toilets with water at the bottom. And Ron Cannon went into the bathroom and took a flashlight and looked into the toilet. And when he did, at the bottom of it, he saw envelopes, mail envelopes, and the addresses to those envelopes were the Sanderholms. He found the Sanderholms mail in the toilet. And like I mentioned to you earlier, like clockwork, Jodi always routinely grabbed the mail before she went inside. So seeing this mail in this toilet in the Kaw Wildlife area, it definitely was a big break in the case. And upon finding this, Ron immediately contacted the lieutenant, and within minutes, the lieutenant, chief, and other police personnel were at the scene. They walked into the bathroom, they looked in the toilet, and they confirmed the mail that was at the bottom belonging to the Sanderholms. But that was not all they discovered. Inside the toilet, when they further inspected it, they found an orange Tigerette's jacket. Now, this was important because this was Jodi's dance team. This was Jodi's dance team jacket that they found in the toilet. And they also discovered a flip-flop and Jodi's wallet. With these findings, police were confident that unfortunately, Jodi more than likely was not alive. And sadly, this was confirmed. On January 9th, 2007, the search and rescue team discovered Jodi's body underneath branches and sticks in a secluded area of the Kaw Wildlife Area. Jodi was found not wearing any clothes. She had several bruises, and it was clear that she had been severely beaten. Jodi's body was confirmed through dental records, and her cause of death was revealed to be strangulation with signs of blunt force trauma. There was also evidence of sexual assault. The medical examiner discovered skin and DNA underneath Jodi's fingernails, indicating she fought back, and when that DNA was ran through the system, it was a match to Justin Thurber. At this point, police were also confident, given the nature of the findings that they already discovered, that Jodi's car, which was still missing up until this point, more than likely was going to be in the lake at the Kaw Wildlife Area, that same fishing lake. Her car had still not been recovered, and police at this point contacted a company called EcuSearch, which is a volunteer search and rescue organization, and they agreed to come out to the Kaw Wildlife Area and use their sonar equipment to see if Jodi's car was in the lake. And once they got on the water, it took no time at all to confirm police's suspicions and see that Jodi's car was in fact at the bottom of this lake. Her license plate that said Jodi Leanne, which was her middle name, right front and center, was still on the car, so there was no question that this car was Jodi's. Now, police were able to take the car into a forensic lot and take a closer look to examine it for any potential evidence, and given that the police were not optimistic because the car had been submerged in water, you would imagine their surprise when there was actually a small hair fiber, a small minuscule hair fiber found in the car. And when that hair fiber was tested, it came back as a positive match to Justin Thurber. It was Justin Thurber's arm hair that was discovered in the car. It truly was a miracle, not only to find that strand of hair that places Justin in Jodi's car, but for that hair to still have enough DNA on it to be a match and to show up as a match to Justin. It was beyond anything police could believe. Now, based on all of the information that police had gathered, they theorized what they believed to have happened leading up to Jodi's murder. Police believe that Justin had been stalking Jodi. They believe that he had been watching her at her dance practices, he had been learning her routine, he had been lurking around the areas that she would frequent, and because she was so routine in her life, he was able to pick up what she was doing. He was able to pick up her day-to-day sequence, and he was watching closely enough where he was able to learn all of this while simultaneously hide in the shadows. And if I didn't make this clear enough in the beginning, Jodi and Justin had no personal connection. Jodi and Justin did not know each other, or if anything, Justin knew Jodi, but Jodi did not know Justin. Police believe that on January 5th, the day of Jodi's disappearance, Jodi left her dance practice. They believe she drove home not knowing that Justin was following her. They believe that after she parked her car, she got her mail just as she always did. However, that is when police believe that Justin conducted a blitz attack, grabbing Jodi and shoving her into her own car, and then Justin drove that car to the Kaw Wildlife Area, which is where he raped, tortured, and murdered Jodi before disposing of her vehicle in the lake. With all of this information and all of the evidence against Justin, Justin was charged with capital murder, aggravated sodomy, aggravated kidnapping, and rape. Justin's trial began on February 2nd of 2009, and the evidence against Justin was really strong, and the prosecution made an even stronger case, and this trial lasted for 7 days, but the jury only deliberated for 3.5 hours. Justin was found guilty on all counts, and the jury recommended the death penalty, which was something that Jodi's family was very vocal that they also wanted. They wanted Justin to be sentenced to death. On March 30th, 2009, the judge sentenced Justin Thurber to death, so he got the death penalty. Now, Justin's defense team has since tried to appeal this, and in 2018, the Kansas Supreme Court actually postponed the decision on whether or not the state would move forward with executing Justin. Justin's defense attorney claimed that Justin was developmentally disabled. However, the prosecution argued that this was just not the case. He graduated from high school, he went to college, he was able to hold down steady jobs, and they just believed that it was an excuse that Justin and his defense team was using to try and prolong his execution. And the judge actually agreed and ruled against Justin and stated that he does not believe that there is sufficient enough evidence to believe that Justin has a developmental disability. And this was in May of 2024 that this finding and this ruling was made. And so now we're here about a year later, and there is still no update on when Justin's execution date will be. However, we will follow this case very, very closely. And that, you guys, is the case of Jodi Sanderholm. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about this case. I think that this case really, it's just one of those cases that is absolutely horrifying because Jodi was just living her life. She was living her everyday life, didn't think anything of it. She didn't know Justin. She went to dance practice that day, not thinking that her life would end just several hours later. She went back to her house. She got her mail. She was about to walk into her home when all of a sudden she was attacked, thrown into her own car, and had to drive the 40-something minutes from her house to the Call Wildlife area in the car with Justin. I can't even imagine the fear that she was feeling. I can't imagine what was going through her mind at that point. The whole thing is just absolutely horrifying. And I do think that if the family wants Justin to be sentenced to death, that is something that will be interesting to see how it plays out and how that decision gets made. It seems like that decision has been made with the latest ruling, and it'll just be interesting to see when that ends up happening. It doesn't seem like an if anymore. It just seems like a win. So that is this case, you guys. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about it. But with that being said, you guys, that is all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I am your host. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We post every single Wednesday on the podcast. You're not going to want to miss it. I will be back next week with a brand new case for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.